Welcome to the Zapata brand. And now, your host, George Zapata.
I know. Yeah.
Because we just started the StreamYard and I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. Now I can't even get this damn. Now I got it. Okay. All right, guys, let's welcome you all to the Zapata brand podcast. And it's not often that you get someone that you grew up with and see him on a success level like my guest today, Jeremy Hassell. Jeremy, I've known you, Jeremy, as a kid, but I knew your brother a little bit more because we played baseball together. But you were always there. You were always there. And I always say it, you had the it factor. By it factor, I mean you looked the part, you dressed the part, and you talked the part, which obviously where you're at now, you do a lot of talking, you're hosting shows, and have really gone above and beyond what I've ever expected someone from our area to go to. So firstly, I wouldn't do you any justice by going out here telling your accolades and your resume. If you could give my audience now who don't know you, which I mean, if they're not following you on Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff, I don't know how they don't know you because I see you everywhere. So if you could please just give me a little bit of a background and then we'll go back and then forward again. If you could.
Well, first, I'm so impressed with the talk show host version of George Zapata. You don't understand.
You wouldn't have expected
it. We go back to the 80s. We go way back. I remember when all the Zapatas had the tail. That's how far.
Oh no! Don't go there. Don't go there, please. Because my brother, Coach Diz, he'll bring that out every now and then. Show my kids, and my kids are like, Dad, what the hell was that? And I'm like, the bad view from the. Yeah, I did have the tail. That was pretty bad, wasn't it?
Come on, Smooths with it.
No.
So did Joe. So did Big D. I grew up at your house. I know what's up.
I know, but you know what? Joe is the one who he lost it first. That hair went first for Joe. So
yeah,
if he had that tail in the back, he looked like Hulk Hogan. So it wasn't good. Wasn't a good look for him.
Before we get off this podcast, later let's circle back. Let me tell you my Hulk Hogan story. I'll tell you that later.
Oh,
but for
please.
now, let me go back. Let me go back to
again.
All right. So some of you who don't know me, well, let's start. A lot of you have probably seen me in certain things here and there. I've been lucky enough to be a part of a lot of different programs. I went to school, University of Hartford. I'm going to give you the elevator pitch of me just to get an understanding. I studied business marketing. I was lucky to study a semester abroad in London. In London, on my first week there, I meet the hottest British chick. Maybe it was the accent. Maybe it was the freckles. I don't know. But after we hung out, she let me know that I should be on the telly. I go, what's the telly? She goes, television. I wasn't even thinking of that, George. I was like, oh, well, you know the rules when you're 19 and any hot girl tells you to do something. Do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah. Oh,
so I said, okay. So I went back to school, back in the United States, and I videotaped a day in my life, sent it to MTV to be on The Real World, which was a big show back in the early 2000s on MTV in the 90s. Yeah. And I made it to the semifinal round of casting. And what
season was that?
This was Back to New York, 2000.
Oh man, that would have been great. We used to watch it all the time.
Come on.
Oh,
so right great. Before,
yeah.
So when I got to the final round of casting, I got to meet with the creators of The Real World, Mary Ellis Bunham and John Murray. Rest in peace, Mary Ellis passed. But she looked at me and she let me know that she goes, I have to let you know that we already casted a person in your role. I was like, my role? And she was like, like the fixer. And I was like, oh, okay. And and she goes, but she said to me, you're natural on camera. You ever thought about being a host or a VJ at MTV? I was like, no. She goes, you should make a tape, send it over and see what you can do. I said, absolutely. I was heartbroken because I thought I was going to be on The Real World. Didn't make it on, but then I changed goals and started learning to host things and do things. And fast forward to moving to New York City, waiting tables after I graduated and making anything I could to learn how to host. I did. I've hosted everything. Everybody watching this. I've hosted bar mitzvahs, church parties, birthday parties, foundation parties, things of that nature, just to get experience. And then fast forward to lucky to getting my first shot on a network called Much Music USA. It was a small offshoot of Much Music Canada. And I started hosting some live programs like TRL, which is an older show in the 2000s here in America that was on MTV. I did a version of that for this network. So I got to learn live, get my chops while I was still waiting tables. Then I sent, to be real with you, I probably sent about anywhere between 70 to 80 reels to MTV over a 3.5 year period. And I was lucky enough that one of the casting directors saw my tape and liked me and actually asked me, this is going to be funny. So this casting director from MTV Talent Development called me at my restaurant at Ruby Foods in Times Square where I worked and said, hey, we got your stuff. We do like you. We're looking for someone to interview Coldplay tomorrow night in Madison Square Garden. Would you be available? I was like, yeah. So I was so excited, my big shot. Then Chris Martin had laryngitis and had to save his voice for the show and couldn't do the interview. So I'm like, there goes my opportunity gone. Oh, they said, we'll keep you in mind.
At that point, had you ever done something on that level? So this was going to be your first, is what I'm gathering.
I am moving too fast. I am so sorry. Let me rewind.
No, because you went from right to Coldplay. I'm thinking, oh my God. I'm meaning hosting. Like you're literally there hosting somebody on that level. You'd be scared to death. I mean,
well, let me rewind back. Let me rewind back, George. Sorry, I skipped over some things. It's been a while, given my origin story. So after I didn't get on The Real World, I decided I wanted to go to MTV after that. So I made sure to send my reel and try to do anything I could with MTV, sending them reels of me hanging out, partying my campus, doing clubs in the city, everything I was doing at that time. And I started doing audience work with MTV, like sitting in the audience and doing things. And then one day, my first ever interview, George, ever, was they had me come into the studio for Madonna had a new album called American Life. And the casting director remembered me from being in the audience and said, hey, we're looking for a few people to interview Madonna from the audience. We want you to do it. I was like, awesome. They said, you ever interviewed him? I was like, yeah, absolutely. I've never interviewed anyone in my life. It was my first time going backstage, meeting Carson Daly, who I grew up on, going, wow, I was meeting him. And I'm meeting all these people backstage. I'm getting makeup done. I'm getting a shirt. I'm like, this is nuts. I went from audience member to doing host is great. And I'm shaking everyone's hands, my head's spinning. Then I'm shaking a hand and I'm looking at this person's face and I go, oh my God. I'm like, Madonna, it's so nice to meet you. Because no one told me she was in the room. She had a hat on. I was just getting my makeup done.
Oh, that is crazy.
And then I got out of the chair and she goes, oh, nice to meet you. And I'm like, wait, we're the same height? And she just started laughing. And I was like, because I'm like, no disrespect. I grew up watching you my whole life and everything. I was like, wow. And she goes, yeah, she has a new album. I said, awesome. So then I went and I met her guitar teacher and her manager. And they're prepping me with questions and things I can and can't say. And she's right there in the room. Madonna's right there. And they were like, wow, are you nervous? I was like, yeah, but I'm excited. And then I look over at Madonna. I'm like, are you nervous? And she was like, she smiled. She goes, actually, yeah. I go, whoa. I go, I've seen you in the Super Bowl. I've seen you on MTV. How could you be nervous for this here? She goes, honey, performers all get nervous. It's how we use it. That's what separates us. And I was like, okay, cool. Then I went out to the audience. I had my second to ask her a question. And remember I told you I spoke with her backstage after she was eating. We hung out for a few minutes. I got to talk to her. When the cameras went on, she turned into a different person. She was giving me one-word answer. She put on the Madonna mask
the worst.
on live TV. So George,
that is the worst.
I had to sink or swim. You know me, I'm a Hassell, dude. I swam.
I just know. You hustle, man. I
didn't let it go. I didn't let go. And then after that, the producers were like, we are so impressed because that's the hardest interview you'll ever have in your life. And they didn't know, but it was my first interview. And I was like, oh, okay. All right, cool. And I realized that's the game. I go, let's see. And then from that on, it took me 4.5 years later of auditioning, doing commercials, making reels. I went because I didn't have a background in broadcast like all the other major hosts do. I said, I got to figure out my way in. So I started hosting everything I could. Live events. I would look on Craigslist. I would look on Backstage. I'd look on Village Voice, find events. I would call people and ask if I could host an event for them or not, just to get experience because I knew what I wanted to do. So I go, let me get close to that, just learning how to host. And then luckily now I'll take you back to after I did Much Music USA, I started my first doing live television. Then the Coldplay interview, I was so excited, didn't happen. They said, we'll keep you in mind. I said, okay, great. They didn't call me again for another year after that. And the year after that, they called me and said, hey, we're looking for someone to be able to travel and interview all the celebrities that are on tour right now and ask them about their favorite summer items. We're doing a show where at the end of the year, you're going to interview all these major celebrities. At the end of the summer, we're going to give one kid all the items that these celebrities say. And I was like, okay, let's go. And they said, great. They made me, I had to sign the contract. That was on a Wednesday. That Friday, I was in Chicago interviewing. My first day was T.I., Fat Joe, Fall Out Boy, and Rise Against in Chicago. But let me come full circle with you. My first day at MTV, I interviewed those 4 artists at Chicago at this major hotel, bougie hotel. The chef at that hotel was Eric Vasta.
Oh my God, really?
That's how small this world is. That's how small this world is.
Wow.
And how about this, George? I didn't even know, and Eric didn't know until after on Facebook, Eric said, I just served Fat Joe dinner. And Eric didn't even know because he was in the back that I was at that dinner. We didn't even know we were at the same place at like the same time. Crazy.
And that,
crazy.
Think about it. That's a small town. Well, Westwood is a rather large town, but it's a suburb of the city. In the same high school, same event.
Yes.
Although I will say, New York and New Jersey, it's popping all the time with celebrities, and you get to, but to have them, you're in there DJing, he's being the chef. That is unbelievable.
It's a small.
And you guys are right around the same age. Small world, man. That is unbelievable. So now
I want to hold up. I'll tell you even smaller the world. When I went to start to interview Fat Joe on my first day at MTV, his assistant goes, "Hey yo, ain't that the guy from Ruby Foos, the restaurant I worked at?" And I said, "Yeah, bro, I did work there. Not anymore. Now look at me." Like it's a small world,
time.
Everyone. It is so tiny.
And it's just those little contacts that you need that you can really propel you to somewhere else. And that's why I always tell people, you never want to be disrespectful to anybody, because you never know down the road, you might need somebody and that person has the answer, has the key that you need to help you. But if you weren't nice to him before, you think that person's going to give you the shot. He's not. And that's the one thing I will say that you have that electric personality. You can't forget Jeremy Hassell. Honestly, you can't, because I told you have that it factor, the way you speak, the way you talk, and the way you carry yourself. Now, I'm going to take that back a little bit.
Okay.
I think, and in my podcast, I really go back a lot to how people grow up and what they are and how they're succeeding in life. I take that back to your dad, and I'll tell you why. Your dad was the first man that I saw. I'm Puerto Rican, you're black, who wore a suit every time I saw him.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And you know what? That came off differently to me, because I thought, we didn't have money. We had no money. We hit it well. Because we just tucked in somewhere and we didn't have it. And to see your father there, successful, the way he dressed, he always had his hair done. Same thing with your mother. You guys were always put together. That trickles down to you and your brother. I never saw John without a suit on. When I saw him outside of playing baseball, he did. He always he wore. He sold me insurance before I left out here. Before I left, yes, he sold me John Hancock insurance when I left for opening my bagel shop. We had a meeting there at my mom's apartment, and he sold all of us insurance, me and my 2 brothers. And he was always dressed nice, a sharp dress. And again, it's from your father and your mother, the way they raised you. Now look at the success you have, which is one of the reasons why I always tell my friends that are going through divorces. It's very important that the father is a very strong man in the family. Because it shows, and just the people, and when I go to speak at schools, I could almost pinpoint, okay, no father there. Split family, grandmother or grandfather watching them. And it's sad to me, because we are, obviously you're a lot more in a different stage than I am, but we are examples of people who came from, on my end, a minority background, your end, a much more, you can actually see you're a black man. Me, I'm Puerto Rican. People kind of think I'm Italian. But you made it to where you are without that victim card of saying, I can't get here because of X, Y, and Z. You made your own path. And I always tell the kids, it doesn't matter where you're coming from. It's where you're going to be at the end. And that's why I think having you on was real important for me, because I've watched you since my brother said, Jeremy Hassell is doing some big things. You got to talk to him. And this was before I wanted to do the podcast. So that's why I'm so happy that you got on. But getting back to your story, you got in there. Now, where are you going next? After you got your big break there, with Coldplay, where do you go now? Where does it lead you to?
Well, first I had to back up to what I think of your little brother, Big D. I call him Big D, but he's your little brother. I remember him and me getting locked in Paramus Park when they were closing down Candy store because we were there at 8:30. They were closing at like 9 or whatever, and the lights went out. And I look at Big D. Big D looks at me. We just yell, "Free candy." And we hear, "Oh, no, you're not." The lights go back on. The gate comes back up and thrown out. You don't understand. Me and this Zapatas, we go way back. So I'm excited to talk to you, George. And I'm
Even
proud
like
of you too, man.
Well, I'm just a dumb bagel guy. I don't.
No.
I'm just a dumb bagel
from
guy.
Domino's
That's it. I just
come on from the path you've gone up, and you're not some dumb bagel guy. You know what I mean? Like you're a fully formed person, man. Like you've seen some things, you've done some things. You always were a solid guy. Your whole family. There's a
Well, we all were in the same boat at some point, and we tried to really improve what we were. But hanging out with people like you guys, it was a solid for me. Like again, I will go back to your dad. Your dad was my baseball coach, and I never had the chance to tell John. And it's one of the things that I regret. I never told John. And me and my brother were both on the same team with your dad as the coach and Pete Garafalos.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And the way he was, he never. And I'm going through an issue right now with youth football and baseball and basketball. They don't make them like your dad anymore. Your dad wasn't a yeller. He wasn't a screamer. He was a guy who said, "Get your work done." And he would encourage you to, and I always, him and Mr. Len. Remember Mr. Len?
Of course.
Stephen Len's dad.
Yeah.
Those two were those two, your father and Stephen Len's dad. His name's Steve too. Mm-hmm. They always stuck in your head. And there's certain people in your life as you're growing up and going through that you say, man, that guy's someone who I'd like to model after. And you look at Steve Len now, you look at Steve Jr., how successful he is. And you look at it again, it comes from the top. And that's why I think you're blessed to have those parents that you have. And he's blessed to have the parents that he has. Now, our situation was a little different, but we gravitated to other people. The Mark Mayers of the world, who Dolores is a good friend of good friend of mine. She kind of put us there, Mark. And they kind of brought us into that circle. And again, with your father showing me baseball, and I didn't have that until he came along. And that's why it's very important to me to say, hey, when I see kids out there not trying to get there, I'll try to. I don't know much, but I'll show them as much as I can, and be like, hey, this is what I can do. And that's why I'm so grateful that your father was in my life as long as he was. He was a baseball coach, and I mean, and I regret to this day not connecting with John and telling him that. I really do, and it was something I wish I did. And again, we talked, but it was when you go out of high school, I mean, you go away. But like the conversation we had right before we connected here, it's like we never left.
Come on, man. That's when it's real.
Yeah, right.
When it's real. And just so you know, George, my brother, he loved you guys, your family, your whole family, nothing but respect, and and my brother, you know what I mean? He was a stand-up guy, the best guy I ever met. You know what I'm saying? I was lucky to have my brother as my big brother because he was always trying to help people, man. And he was always as real as it gets, and I wish he was here now so he could be on this call with us, because that would have been, oh, come on, man. I would have said
John was something else. I mean, he was something else. John was something else. And again, I go back to that, to playing baseball with him and doing the crazy things you do in school. And he was just a different guy. He was a different guy. And I mean, if you want to get into it a little bit about your brother, I don't know the exact details, but I mean, he was suddenly that happened. He got sick, and that was it. But he left a family behind, and that was I know you were a big part of their family too. Right now, you with your now is it niece and nephew?
My niece and nephew. Yeah, you're good, George. Yeah,
niece and nephew.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
How do you bring them into the fold now? Do you watch them as much? Do you see them all the time? Are you trying to be that father like your father was? Because I know John was a great father. I know he was a great father. He has and so, I mean, how does that play into you now? Because do you have a family? I'm sorry, I know you're married.
No, I'm recently divorced as of 2 months ago.
Hey, join the club.
My whole life 2 months ago. My whole life has shifted.
What in the hell?
My whole life, but put that on the side for a second.
We'll get to. Hey, we're going to get back to that. I hate to tell you, we're getting back to that. Yes.
Okay, so we're bonded again on another level.
We're bonded.
But with my brother, it it was suddenly that my brother passed. He passed of sepsis, which is a blood disease when you get a sickness into your blood and it goes in and it shuts off your organs and your body shuts down little by little. It started from a massive flu that he had and it went in that way. And he left us suddenly. It wasn't a lead up. There wasn't a, oh my gosh, what's happening? He just thought he was kind of sick. And it just kept transpiring and went down. And it was the hardest thing I've ever been through in my life, was losing my protector, my best friend, you know, the guy who's always, he was my guy. That's my go-to. My whole life has been my brother. But what I learned from his passing was to be so grateful I had him for as long as I did. Because as you spoke about earlier, George, the male figures in your life, my brother is the most important person in my life, because I'll give a story. Here's one story of many. The reason I am the person I am is because of John Lamar Hassell. When I was in 7th grade, I tried out to be on the basketball team in junior high in Westwood High School. I didn't make the team, and all my friends did. I came downstairs in my house, picked up my Super Nintendo. That's how old this is. And I'm upset and I'm crying, playing games. My brother comes home from school. He's like, "What's up?" And I was like, "Man, I didn't make the team. I'm too little. It's whatever." He goes, "Oh, yeah?" He goes and he shuts the TV off, takes the remote, and he goes, "I got to tell you something, little bro." I go, "What?" He goes, "You didn't make team because you're too little. You didn't make the team because you're not good enough." And I was like, "Oh." And he goes, "Listen." He goes, "Let's go outside." He takes me outside. He takes the basketball. He goes, "I'm going to show you a few drills to do with this basketball." He's like, "I'll promise you that if you take this basketball and do these drills and practice every day for the next year, you'll make the team. But every day, no excuses." And I wiped my tear and I was like, all right, because my brother's I looked up to him. So literally, George, every day, 365 days, I drilled and played basketball. When it was snowing, I was in the garage. When it was raining, I was in the garage doing drills against the wall, working on my handle, things of that nature. The next year, I made the team and I was starting point guard. I learned at 13 years old that I have to work harder than everyone else, but that's how you get to your goals. So I've adapted that to my entire life. That one lesson, it was hard, tough love he gave me, but you see how he also gave me a path. He didn't just say you suck. He said, this is why it didn't happen. And he gave me a path to go down. And that changed me as a person. So, because I believe I can do anything long as I put that hard work in. So that's one example I've got of my brother.
Right. It's an evergreen lesson. It's always it goes with you the rest of your life. You know, and that's that was something. And it's funny you bring up that story, because John, one of the legendary stories that John, your brother, I don't know if you know, he was going to play third base. Remember Mr. Yurko?
Of course.
Okay. He was going to play third base, and John was the first one out on the field, and he was the last one to leave. Okay. And he was going for third base, and Mr. Yurko would hit rockets. I mean, fielding practice, rockets. I saw your brother get hit right in the forehead with one line drive, right? He was on roller skates, but he got back in position and said, "Give me another one."
That's right.
And I'm thinking, is this guy nuts? Because I was in right field. I played right field because I wasn't that good. So I played right field. And I'm like, I looked at him. I heard it from right field, and I was like, I'm out of here. Because I mean, Mr. Yurko, you know, he was a semi-pro ball player, and he took things seriously.
Yeah.
And I always looked at that, and I see things like that stick out in your head and say, this guy's a man's man who says, you know, I'm not quitting. And then you tell me this story. I'm like, no, that's John. John ain't going to quit. You give me another one. Give me another one. I'll take another one. I couldn't believe it. I said, man, he got that third base position, because ain't no one going to take that rocket to the head and go right back into. I mean, he literally got back in position. I was like, no, I'll take another one. It was an amazing thing. But so go ahead. As you know, you were talking about your brother, and you said sepsis, and that also again sets back something to me. My current wife, believe it or not, I got married again.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. It was last Tuesday. I got married again. And
congratulations.
Her husband. Thank you. And her husband passed away from sepsis. Broke his leg, had a heart transplant, and suddenly at 48 years old, passed away years ago. And I knew him and had sepsis, and that's why that rung a bell to me. I said, "Oh man, I know what that is," but I didn't want to interrupt your story. I know that's a sudden thing. Like he went in because he broke his leg.
Yeah, man.
Because he fell, and he goes in, and now he got sepsis.
It's if it spreads too fast and the doctors don't catch it, there's nothing modern medicine can do, because it goes, when it's in your bloodstream, everyone, it goes everywhere at once, and your organs don't know what to do and what to protect. So then the body protects you by shutting down, and we lose people in that way. And it's upsetting too, because let's keep it all the way 100. My brother wasn't in the best health. He wasn't taking care of himself the way he should have. And maybe his body could have fought it off better if he did. So there's a wake up call to anyone watching this podcast as well, to make sure to be healthy, to do your best to take care of yourself, what you put in your body, make sure to exercise, and make sure your inside and your spirits are together, because life is so precious, man.
It's time is the one commodity you can't get back. And, I wish I did. I like sit here and I regret stuff that I'm like, man, I can't. And one of the reasons why I did do this podcast is because I want to do this. Look, I got a bagel shop. I have a different stream of income, but I enjoy doing this. I enjoy sitting here at 10:30, talking to someone who I haven't spoken to in years. And now I can rekindle this relationship, and, we can go further from here. But if you don't mind me asking,
sure.
How do you cope with that when initially it happens, and the shock of, like you said, your protector, your big brother? How do you cope now?
That's a question that I don't have an answer to, but I can give you how I'm dealing and how it handled. This is almost 4 years ago, right? Initially, what happened, George, when he passed, my first it was unbelievable, because it was the first person. I've lost a few friends, I've lost some family members before, but this was the first person that I spoke to the most. I spoke to my brother almost every day or every other day. So at first it was shock, and the second was I just needed to get to his wife and kids immediately so they could see my face, because I already knew. I go, oh, he's gone. I go, so what would he want me to do? Be around. That's simple, George. So immediately I took a second, and it was really hard, because at the moment my brother was in the hospital when he passed, at the same time, my father was in a separate hospital undergoing some issues with his sciatica. So my family was divided. And I was like, okay, so I have to step in and be who my brother was, and I have to be the strong one here, because my dad is not doing well at the moment. My mom, it's when you lose your son, it changes you. So it changed at the moment. So my first instincts were just to be the rock that my brother was. Like, I had no choice. It was like, okay, let me just do this. So I had to put my feelings, which isn't healthy, but I had to put my feelings to the side. I had to deal. I had to go, wait, I have to make sure I have to get this funeral taken care of, see where his kids and family are at. I had to take care of all that. I didn't have time to break down. I just lost it when we had to put him in the casket, and seeing him in that way. That was when I did the best I could, but that's when I really, truly was just a mess. But other than that, what I realized was very early on that first, he wasn't coming back. And second, what can I do now? Because I can't bring him back. I can't change what happened. And there's a choice you have. Here's the deep one, George, because you want to talk about the real stuff. So let me fast forward to after the funeral. I come back to New York City a week later after helping my family and stuff. And I go to my gym, and I get on the Stairmaster. And a lady who I always work out with, she's an ex-bodybuilder. She's about 72. Her name is Ginny. She's a Greek lady, and she's jacked. She's 72, and she can do about 20 pull-ups. Yeah, you heard that correct, everyone. She's 72, and she can do about 20 pull-ups. I'm just putting that out there right now. So I get on the Stairmaster with her, and she goes, where you been? And I was like, my older brother passed, and I had to handle that. So I've been out of town the last few weeks. And she goes, okay. And we slow down the Stairmaster, and she goes, how old, and she goes, how many years difference? And I go, we were 4 years difference. And she goes, okay. And she goes, well, listen, I lost my older brother when I was a little bit younger than you, and we were 4 years difference, and he was my everything too. She goes, I'm gonna tell you something. I go, what? She goes, there's going to be times where you're going to see people who are not good people, and you're going to see people who do bad things and things of this nature, and you're going to be mad. How come this person is here and your brother, who was evidently a great person, isn't here anymore? And you're going to have a choice. You can either go down that path and hate the world, or you can just accept what happened and move forward. And remember, I told you this, and I was like, damn. I'm just sitting here looking at her, and I work out early in the morning. It's 7 a.m, and I'm looking at her, and I'm like, Ginny, thank you. I go, I needed to hear that. Because that's what happens when things get taken from you, whatever. You get mad. That's human emotion. But how to handle it is the kind of person you are. So I've decided right away, especially with that conversation from her, from a stranger, a new friend I made, a gym buddy, right? That I go, wow, I'm going to take my brother's passing as a lesson for me. And it was a blessing we had someone that good on earth as long as he was, because that's the way I'm choosing to look at it. The time I had with him, not what got taken from me, the time that I had. And that's the hardest thing to remind yourself when I get upset, when I get down, when I go to call him when something good or bad happens. Still to this day, I remember, oh, that's right, he's not here, but at least I had him, and all the people that he shaped and helped their lives, they had him too. He just left early, but his impact will always be here. So now, George, how I cope with it is every day. People tell you all the time, it's time, but it really is. You get stronger over time and you lose things that are close to you, and you learn to deal with those feelings better. Whereas before I might be like crippled with anger, upset, guilt, all these things I wanted. And then I take a second now and I go, well, this is a part of life. It's the full circle. You have to lose, you're going to gain. That's part of life, everyone's life. It just so happened this was my brother, it was John Lamar Hassell, who left. And so it's a choice, everyone. So if you ever lose someone really close to you, you have to grieve and accept that they're gone and what happened, and things you wish would have went changed, or things you wish you would have did, but that's the past. It's no longer here. Take that as a lesson for being the best version of yourself and going forward and representing that person. So I represent my brother everywhere I go. You know what I mean? People see me, they think of John, if you ever met my brother. So that's just where I'm at. And you asked earlier how I deal with his family. What I do my best is I could never be a father to Chase and Carter, my niece and nephew, but his son and daughter. But what I can do is be the best uncle I can be to them, because that's all I can be. They moved, they're in California now, and I'm here in New York.
Okay.
So that's where their mother's family is. So they moved out there.
Yeah.
So all I do is try to be in communication as much as possible. And the real truth is I keep it so real with my niece and nephew when I speak with them. Yes, I'm their uncle, but I never lie to them. I've always just kept it as straight as possible. And I try to have the conversations that my brother would want me to have with them. And then on the other side of that is my niece, Chase. She is, my brother and her spirits are intertwined. So when I talk with my niece, in a way, it feels like I talk to my brother, and it's the weirdest thing ever. And anyone that ever really knew my brother, if you talk to my niece for at least a half hour, you were going to go, oh, that's John Lamar Hassell right there. Female version, younger. She's so strong. She's so caring. She's beautiful inside and out. And hearing her point of view of things, she's blunt like my brother. So it's so interesting talking to her. And the first time I really recognized it was after the funeral. Me and Jason Ortiz, who I grew up with, too, from Westwood, we took Chase to the mall, and she was talking, and Jason looks at me. He's like, dog, she's your brother. I go, yo, he goes, no, they are so much alike. And I go, yeah, you're actually right in so many ways. So I'm lucky enough to have her around. So when I'm missing him, I text her because she doesn't like talking on the phone, the kids these days.
Oh, what kid does, we had landlines. We couldn't even move the phone.
Come on, man.
Then I take that back. When I did have a phone, ours got shut off numerous times growing up because we didn't pay the bill. So evidently, having electricity was a luxury in our house. Although we faked it pretty good, but
yeah, I never even knew that. No, George, I never even knew that. Your family You talked about my family, talk about yours. When the Zapatas were around, it was this instant respect from all of us. I mean, of course, because y'all were so nice with these, the world knew that the Zapatas are no joke with these, but also all three of you were such solid people and had that same aura and energy of respect. It was demanded when you guys came into and whatnot. And, you know, all of you had jokes, and that was always great too. So your family, I would have never known you were struggling at all, ever, George, from the way you present yourself. I never would have known that.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I tell the story a lot when I do my speaking, and I tell them, you know, it's everyone has issues, no matter what it is. It depends on how you handle those issues from where you go. You can go down a bad path. You can go down a good path. It's whatever you choose. I chose that I wanted to open up my own business. Now, listen, you remember, I did not go to school. I barely went in high school. Barely. I was barely there. I was barely there. They put the 21-day rule in because of me and Andrew Amelia. We never went. Never went. That 21-day rule, that's ours. That's ours. You could check mark that on our resume.
I didn't know that either. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
The year we were supposed to allegedly graduate, which we didn't. I think he got his GED because he's doing very well out in California. In California, I heard. They put that rule in. You cannot 21 days. You cannot. That was us. I still think it stands now. Although there is no student left behind now. So everyone has their struggle that they go through, which takes me to my next part. And whether you're willing to talk or not about your personal life, it's totally up to you. I went through a divorce. It ended 3 years ago, but we were 3 years prior to that. So you're looking at a 6-year turn. The struggle that has, and now now let's take this. I'm in a small town here. Okay. You are in a huge city where you have lights on you, celebrities. So you're kind of in a limelight. Then you were dealing with your brother passing. How does that affect you to still stay as positive as you are? Because looking at your websites and looking at the stuff you do, there is nobody that I've seen with so much energy and so much positive. The vibe that you get when you look at Jeremy Hassell, his websites, his shorts, his YouTube shorts, not your shorts that you wear. I mean, you know what I mean? YouTube shorts, your Twitter, your Instagram. There's never not a smile on your face. Never, forget about all the other stuff, the background noise. I've never seen someone who is as electric, which I said you had the it factor even as a kid, as you. How did that? And you could go as deep or as not deep as you want about your personal life. Because I got to be careful because I got kids, and you could get me in trouble. So,
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, how did that at that time? Because I know here in the business when I was going through it, it was absolute. There was basically the roofs were leaking in all different spots, and I had to pick one to close up because all the water was coming in.
Oof.
I didn't know what to do. How did you go through that? With now the limelight of Hollywood on you.